Welcome to Those Who Can't Do. I am Andrea Forkham, and today we have Kevin McClintock, but you guys probably know him as Mr. McTikTok, who I am so excited to talk to today. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Andrea.
Yeah, I was very excited. I think I did a decent job when we were both at VidCon, and I tried to be very cool, but I was actually very excited to meet you because we have a bunch of mutual friends that I had hung out with a lot, but you were like one of the only ones I hadn't met yet. And I don't know that anyone was even expecting you to be at VidCon, right?
Yeah, so I didn't tell anybody I was coming to VidCon because we didn't know if we were going to truly make it, because it seems like every summer where I'm trying to use up my summer vacation to travel and whatnot. And then we finally were like, no, we need to do this. Like, this is important. And so, yeah, we surprised everybody.
You did. Yeah, we were wandering around the convention center, and really at VidCon, my whole job was just holding Andy, who, if you guys don't know Andy, she's the sticker lady teacher. I was just holding her purse while she was just like swarmed by all these little middle school fans and stuff like that. So it was really fun to get to be the person who's like holding all this stuff and watching, one of our friends just get admired and I didn't realize this, but a lot of her fan base is like younger middle school, high schoolers. And for me, it tends to be like the teachers themselves, the adults and all of that. Now, what about for you? Is your fan base mostly middle schoolers, or is it the parents as well?
It depends. So it depends on the platform. Like on TikTok, it's probably going to be a lot of kids, and, parents and adults, moms. And then on Instagram, it's like mainly adults, just because I feel like when I use like my millennial wit and humor,
Yeah.
it lands so much better on Instagram than it does on TikTok. So I have a feeling it's older, but like you can't trust analytics.
Right.
I'm going to be honest. The kids lie about their age on these platforms all the time.
Constantly.
So like I'll look and I'm like, I don't have that many 18-year-olds that follow me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's so funny you mention that it hits differently with like millennial humor and all of that, because I just got my course reviews back, and this is the first time I've looked at my, like, as a college professor, looking at course reviews. I always did it with my students, but my students knew that I could like recognize their handwriting even if it was anonymous.
Yeah.
And this was completely digital, so it's truly anonymous. And I got just absolutely wrecked by one of my classes. And I was like so crushed. But one of the things they said was they felt like I would argue with them. And I was like, I don't argue with what? Like, I don't know what that. And I was chatting with a couple people about it, and they're like, well, the millennial sarcastic humor doesn't always translate 100% to Gen Z. And sometimes they see it as argumentation when really you're just like challenging their thought process or being sarcastic, and they don't vibe with it as much. And I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble. Like,
yeah, I think like we grew up. No, but like we grew up with sarcasm.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like there was, there was more that we could say in like the early 2000s that was like sarcasm and not as offensive as it is now. But like we've always been, I don't know, I think from the time I remember like being in elementary school, like just about that like developmental age of like 6th grade, we can start like understanding sarcasm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's all we talked in.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like everything that we said came out as sarcasm. And so like, it's so natural for us to do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's funny because I've subbed like little kids, and I'll forget like, when I first started teaching, I was like a sub for K through 12. And I went from like 12th graders in like AP Lit to like kindergarten Spanish. And I was like just being super witty and like, whatever, like sarcastic. And they were vibing with it. And then I get to like these 5-year-olds and I'm like, oh man, what am I doing? Like I had to really like code switch real quick.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and somebody I was talking to said that they think maybe part of it is as well that these kids are living in comments and in DMs and all of that, where like they're not learning like the voice inflection in the same way. And
yeah, 100%.
My students that I had right now, I think, gosh, I can't believe it's been 4 years since COVID, but they would have been like seniors in high school. So at that point, they should have kind of been there already. But I think it is maybe just like a generational thing a little bit. So I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna have to navigate that.
yeah, like the slang that we use or the things that we think is funny or snarky
Yeah.
to them is like actually rude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
something that's like new, like we'd like put a thumbs up,
Mhm.
like we're like, yeah, that's cool. Like, good job,
Yeah.
whatever. A thumbs up to Gen Z is like, it's like, just
Really?
like, it's like a great,
Oh,
you're weird.
man. Jeez.
So like the thumbs up is like offensive to them.
Oh my gosh. I'm in
That's
so
what I'm
much
saying. So
trouble.
there is that like generational, it's always going to happen. I mean, that's why like our teachers were always like offensive to us or like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm
Like
like,
as
"Man,
you
they're
get
tough."
older, yeah, you're like, why are they so mean? When like, I'm sure like, are like, I don't know. I probably had teachers that were like in their 50s when I was, a teenager. And like the generational gap in that,
Yeah.
like the way that they could talk to you is not the way that we could talk to like our kids today.
You know what the worst part is if you looked up the actual age of the teachers that we felt like were in their 50s when we were
Oh
in
yeah,
high
dude, they
school.
were like 30.
Yeah, they were probably like 30 or something, and I'm like, "Oh, dang." Before we go too far away from, VidCon, I wanna talk about the meet and greet that we went to.
Oh my. That was so sketchy, dude. I'm
It's so my fault too. So
Oh.
one of our friends, Lauren Chella, who's been on the podcast, she had to leave early, but she had made all of these fun connections because she went to the Meta headquarters and all of that. And she texted me, she's like, "Hey, I heard about this cool meet and greet. It's not at the convention center. It's like 15 minutes out from where the hotel is. And it's just like content creators and businesses that want to work with content creators." So I was like, "Oh, awesome." And so I messaged Kevin about it. I was like, "Hey, you and Katie should come." And so I went separately, and on my way there, this was like late June, and as we're driving further and further away, we're not driving to a nicer area of Anaheim. We're just starting to get like there's
Nope.
a lot more check cashing places and gas stations and stuff like that. And I hear something that sounds like a gunshot on my way there. And I asked the driver, the Uber driver, I'm like, was that a gunshot? And he did not acknowledge that I said anything. He did not respond to me. And then I pulled up and it's a house, like, and not a super fancy house, just a house that I would not wanna be at alone. And at that point, I wasn't even sure if you and Katie were gonna make it. So I get out of the car and I'm like, "Oh my gosh. Is this the end for me?" Like, I'm like, I took a video to send to my husband. I, like, sent him my location. That way, they could identify the body later. Like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
was
dude. We rolled up and I was like, where are we? I was like, are we just walking into a house? Like,
yeah,
I mean, it was super cool, like the way that they like designed their studio, that it was like in the back. Like, it's California. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
everybody has to do something with what little land they have.
yeah.
But yeah, you roll in thinking that you're going to like a meet and greet with like businesses and all this stuff, and you're thinking, like, I mean, because we had gone to that TikTok party like the night before,
Yeah, maybe that was part of the
and
problem.
and that was also the expectation. You're like, and the way that like my wife described that party was like everything that you would see on like TV and in movies, like in the early 2000s for parties, like is what it was.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Everybody, there's food, there's like people dancing, DJs, and you're like, this is insane,
yeah.
And then you show up to like this super laid back, like almost like a house
Like
hangout.
like a kickback is what it
Like a
felt like.
kickback.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It went from like a party to a kickback. And it
Mhm.
was really like, yeah, when we walked up, I was like, what are we like supposed to be here?
Like,
Like,
right? It felt weird.
and then it felt really weird because the businesses like weren't even there. It was just a bunch of
Yeah.
content creators and influencers and whatnot. And then I think the pace of it was really weird because I did like a panel,
Yeah.
and it was supposed to be a meet and greet. Like if you call something a meet and greet, it's for people to meet and greet, not to
Right.
sit there and like watch a whole panel like as like the main focus. Like you're not supposed to talk. And there was like that clash, right? You
Yes.
had all the people that wanted to meet and greet in the back, and they were super loud, and like they were doing what was essentially like what they were told to do.
Yeah.
But then it also came off as super rude
And we're
to the
teachers, so we
people.
are sitting as quietly as possible,
uh,
making as much eye contact with the presenters as we possibly
I
can.
know. I was like, every fiber in me was like, I just want to be like, shut up.
Right.
Like, were you raised in a zoo? Like, what's wrong with you? Know what I mean? Like, I was like, seriously, they're all like adults that are like
Mhm.
talking over presenters, but like at the same time, I can't fault them. because they were told it was a meet and greet.
Yeah.
And so they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. I just think that like maybe it's a whole learning, like that whole event is a big learning event,
It
like a big
is.
learning experience for them. So
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I accidentally almost got us all trafficked by going to this
I know, dude. I was
somewhat
like, what is this?
legitimate party thing. It was insane.
I
Um,
know.
so now you, however, you mentioned that you're on summer break and you always try and, like, fill as much as you can, but it's fall now. So what is
Yeah.
the plan for you right now?
So we were actually, my wife and I stepped away from teaching because I wanted to try to start a family with my wife. And we were going to move to her hometown. So I was going to be leaving my school anyway. And I felt like, okay, well, I'd like to pursue social media. Um, and I think a lot of the reason behind that is I can't tell you how many times like I've had an interaction with somebody because of social media that was incredible. Like I got to like pour into somebody or um, create a friendship somewhere. And I just thought it was really cool because I have kids that come up to me and I get to ask them about, everything going on in their life. And it's like it's funny. Like I was in Costco the other day and the kid walks up to me. He's like, dude, you're the YouTuber. Like, and I was like meeting him and his dad was there like, dude, let me take a picture. And I just
Aw.
got to ask him about himself. And, like the crazy part is just that little simple thing is going to be like a highlight for him, like a core memory.
Yeah,
And I think for me, like I remember those times like when I really looked up to people, like we didn't have social media the same way that we have it now. But like
right.
when I met people that I really like aspired to be
Mhm.
and they were just like so cool, like just normal,
Yeah,
I was like, yes. And it
right.
was inspiring. And so for me, I would love to be able to, I don't know, like to build community and mentor on a greater scale than just my classroom. And I will always miss my class, like my kids
Well, and it's
and
it's
teaching.
kind of insane too when you think about it because the kid who came up and was so excited to see you in Costco, that same kid, if he were to be in your class and see you every day, he probably like you probably have a lot better chance of saying something like super memorable to him in those 2 minutes than if you were up there and you were like, "Okay, guys, today here's what we're gonna do." He'd be like, "Oh, it's my teacher, whatever." But because
Yeah.
you're like the YouTuber, all of a sudden now everything you say is at like this absolute pedestal, which I think is really
Yeah.
fun.
It's it it always starts like the first week of school or whatever. All the kids are like, oh my gosh, he's famous, whatever. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm
Yeah.
just like, I make ridiculous videos and people sometimes like them. Um, but when we go like on a field trip or something, like when we go to DC with the eighth graders, people like that's just like my demographic. So like the place that I get recognized the most is in DC on that trip,
Really?
and I mean like Andrea, it was like 150 times. Like I like no matter where we went, like somebody was like, dude, I what? But I was also wearing my whole costume,
Oh,
like
okay,
my
yeah.
jersey and stuff. Like I was just like
Yeah.
hamming it up and having a fun time. But
Right.
the kids like start getting really like protective. They're like, that's my teacher. You don't even know him. You don't even know him. You know what I mean? Like it's funny. Like I had somebody, like one of my former students say, like, you know what? Like they don't know you like we know you, and we know you're way more than like just social media,
Right.
And it was like one of the sweetest things a kid could have ever said to me. But they also will like say it backhandedly,
Right, of
you
course.
know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They love to see it because you're famous and they think that's cool, but then also they love to just troll you for it because they're middle
Yeah,
schoolers.
exactly.
One of the things you brought to talk about today was relationships with your students and the importance of that connection. So, how do you build that kind of a connection? And this is like honestly for me as well, even working in college, I have a really hard time with connecting as much with the very quiet students, the ones who are just there and trucking away and doing their work all the time. Because I am not that way. I tend to just not connect with them as much. I have to be way more intentional. So, what are the things that you do to connect with like those really quiet, introverted kids that if you call on them in the middle of class, they're going to like shrivel up and die? Like, how do you do that?
Well, I married an introvert, which definitely helps. Actually, I married an introvert therapist, so that definitely helps. But at the same time, I've learned to look for those kids specifically, because you're always going to have like the kids that are like me. Like I definitely have kids that are, um, they're like, they're mini me's, you know what I mean? And they're like, they can be super loud and boisterous and, all of that. But then I look at like the kid sitting next to them who like maybe isn't saying anything. And I don't know, I go and I see them for them,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. Like I go and I get on their eye level and I talk to them and like, sure, like I can't do all that in a classroom, like in a class period,
Right.
but it happens outside. So like sometimes what I would do is I would just go down for lunch and I would sit down and like, even if I didn't have lunch duty, I'd just like go down and hang out with the kids, and just like talk to them and get to know them. And ask them about their interests, and I'd see something like, one of the things is like, I like anime. Um, but I like never really displayed that or anything in my classroom until some of my introverted kids were like super into it. So then I like went and like Amazoned a couple like anime posters and put them like in my classroom. Just so like the kids could like see something, like tangibly see something and be like, oh, I've got a connection with my teacher.
Yeah.
Even though my teacher is like a surfer bro, like loud extrovert, like whatever, they could see that and be like, oh, and then I have like one of my kids to this day. He is a junior now. Wow. Super quiet, has um, struggles with creating friendships and everything. But he would get me little like Dragon Ball Z action figures and I'd like put them up in my class. And then he would just come hang out. He was like one of those guys that would like help me film. He'd be like the camera guy and wouldn't say anything, but I would be able to sit there and just talk to him, just because of that little bit of connection. But I think, I'm just the biggest goof in the room and and I act like the dumbest one in the room. So like the kids, I don't know, they feel like they can not necessarily like fully relate, but they feel comfortable,
Yeah.
because I'm like shameless.
Yeah.
Like I'm willing to embarrass myself in like the most extreme ways
Mhm.
that my students are like, okay, cool.
Yeah. I feel like that's really powerful too, just because I remember one of my high school English teachers, she would when we were watching, I think Macbeth is what it was. She would put it up to like play for the class after we finished reading Macbeth, and then she put like a sheet over herself and walked around the class with the lights dim and like tried to like spook people. But I mean, she's like a grown woman walking around with a sheet over her head, going
Yeah.
"ooh," but it's like a complete core memory because
Yeah. And
she,
you remember it.
of course, and she was really tough with us most of the time. I mean, she gave so much homework, and she was just one of those teachers that expected a ton from us but then would allow us to see kind of like the sillier nature that she had when it was not a moment where we had to be super serious. And I think that's incredibly powerful. Being willing to be like the butt of the jokes in the classroom, I think is a really good way of going about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't know. I actually surfed with a former student of mine who graduated a couple years ago. And I was asking him, I was like, what are some of your core memories of my class? And he was saying, that one time in eighth grade, that was a long time ago, but
Right.
like in eighth grade, when you came in with your blue suit and all you did was talk as like a New York mafia guy. And it was just like something I was just like, what can I do that would just be ridiculous that these kids would like remember? Like,
Yeah.
that would keep them engaged. And it was just something like that. And of course, some of the kids are gonna be like, oh, you're so dumb and cringy. But
Yeah. But they
but
love
that's still
it.
something to this day that he remembered,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's great. And I always I have like the intent in my soul to do stuff like that. But then I think about actually doing it and I get too embarrassed and I think I just need to get over it, especially since I'm now teaching future teachers. They would be way more likely to be on board and not be like, this is dumb, I'm not participating because they're all future teachers, you know? And I very much do try and use the different teaching strategies in class that I'm teaching them to use because there's nothing worse than like when you go to the college class and you're learning how to be a teacher and they spend the entire time lecturing and tell you not to lecture like
Yeah, I know. It's so backwards. Like everything I learned in college about teaching, I never used.
yeah.
I was like, are you kidding me? Like lesson plans. Now AI writes your lesson plans for you.
Yep.
Like, come on, let's be honest. Like the thing that I took away from it from college was that I could, like I could make sure I turn things in on time and like the basic skills. But I feel like that is something that's like so missing when you're a teacher for teachers,
Yeah.
is that you need to model like who your like kids are going to be. And like one of the things that I really appreciated, because I'm crazy and my teachers always knew it, but even in college, I was like one of, because I was actually going to be an elementary teacher originally, and so like my degree was dominated by females. I
Right.
was like one of like five guys in like a cohort of like 500 women, and so I was always notable to my teachers. And I did one class that was like teaching PE,
Mhm.
and I ended up being like in this one like subsection where I was the only guy, and I just clowned. I told the teacher, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna goof off and stuff. And she's like, you know what? These girls need to be able to handle somebody that is that acts like a seventh grade boy or a sixth grade boy. And
Yeah.
I that's what I did, dude. I goofed off. I bent the rules of like whatever they were teaching and stuff. And they would get so frustrated with me. And obviously I was having like a field day with it. I was like
You're
having
like,
so much
"I'm
fun.
allowed to be bad in class."
But yeah, but then she was like, and then she would like address the girls after and be like, okay, so how many of you guys were really frustrated with Kevin today? And like all of them. And then she was like, he's gonna be just like your students.
Yeah.
Like you remember that.
Yeah.
And I was like, in your faces. So you know what I
Well,
mean?
you
Like,
know what? That is so powerful because it's really hard before you get into the actual classroom to know what to do with kids that are genuinely making you laugh but disrupting the entire class. Like
oh
that
my gosh.
is so hard, and it's so
Yeah.
hard to emulate outside of the real classroom to be able to be like, "Okay, you're going to have a kid. It's going to come in and they are going to say something that is inappropriate but genuinely one of the funniest and best times jokes you've heard in weeks. And you aren't allowed to laugh and you have
Yep.
to get everybody back on track." I was so terrible at that. And I was such an idiot. My first year teaching, I remember I told my students, again, why did I say this? But I told my students that if I laughed, then I didn't feel like it would be ethical for me to write them up. So their goal then from that point on was like,
Oh
if
man.
we make it funny enough, she's not going to write us up. And I don't know why I thought that because generally, like I do think it's kind of messed up if you're laughing at the joke as you're writing a referral or whatever. But you don't tell them that. You don't give them
Yeah.
basically carte blanche to say the funniest things that come into their head because I'm gonna laugh. Like there's no way I'm gonna be able to keep a straight face when they do some of the things that they do. Um,
100%.
oh my gosh. And then in those class situations, especially, that's when I really for I struggled connecting with the introverts because the kids who would get us off topic are the ones I'm interacting with the most. And then the introverted kid that's literally just like waiting, like, Can we please talk about what we're going to be doing today? I don't want to waste this time. I could be using this time to work." And they get frustrated with me. And that was always my challenge all the way through, still is. If I have like a super chatty, funny student in my class, then I'm like, we're building class community.
Yeah. And it's like natural to like enjoy them for, who they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's totally like on the flip side of things, like then the kid that is being overshadowed and is like does listen and does their work on time. I just feel like those kids a lot of the time are just overlooked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just
Hmm.
because like they don't require as much like help or attention.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like I've my first couple years of teaching, I definitely probably fumbled the bag on that.
Yeah.
Um, but as I matured, I really looked for the kids that like needed that extra bit of help. You
Yeah.
know, and my classroom wasn't necessarily designed to be quiet all the time. Like
Hmm.
that's not who I am.
Right.
Like we'd play review games, and we'd do these things called like history hoops, and like we'd be playing like trash get ball and stuff, and it would just get like super fun and loud. And I had some kids that like didn't necessarily like that, and so I had to like come up with different ways to incorporate that every now and then to like, okay, now it's like silent ball, or now it's we do different teams and things like that. And so over time, I had to learn to look for those kids.
100%. And I thought I had gotten better at it until I got my reviews from my spring students, and like it was just very clear that there were a couple of students that definitely felt like I didn't make an effort to kind of get to know them in the way that they saw me chatting with some of the other students. So even if, we've been doing it for a long time and we think we're doing really well, sometimes a little bit of honest feedback
Yeah.
unfortunately showed me that I was not doing as great as I had hoped. Okay, so we are going to take a very quick break. And then when we get back, we're going to talk about some middle school behavior that was in the news this week. Be right back.
Whew.
Welcome back to Those Who Can't Do. Okay, Kevin, I have you seen in the news what RFK did?
No, I don't really watch the news, which is probably why I'm like such a happy person.
I
But
yes, I don't watch the news either. This was one of those because my husband does love the news, and I was walking through, and I just caught a little tidbit, and then I found the original article. So I'm going to read you an excerpt from this article from the New Yorker. Okay, um, one day in the fall of 2014, Kennedy was driving to a falconry outing in upstate New York when he passed a furry brown mound on the side of the road. He pulled over and discovered that it was the carcass of a black bear cub. Kennedy was tickled by the find. He loaded the dead bear into the rear hatch of his car and later showed it off to his friends. In a picture from that day, Kennedy is putting his fingers inside the bear's bloody mouth, a comical grimace across his face. When I asked Kennedy about the incident, he said, "Maybe that's where I got my brain worm." Then, I'm going to summarize for you what he did with the bear. Because he went then to an event, forgot he had the bear in his car because he was going to take it home and skin it. And again, like when I read this, I kept thinking this sounds like a seventh grade boy would do exactly these things. So he stopped, he picked up the dead bear, put it in the back, and then he decides, okay, I'm going to skin it and eat the meat. And then he forgot about it. And then he was late for something. So instead of taking it, skinning it, and like getting the meat and the fur, he went to Central Park in New York City and then staged the dead bear around a bicycle, making it look as if the bear had been killed by the bicycle. And he left it there. Like it was 10 years ago, but it was like in the news that they found this dead bear in the park. They weren't sure where it came from or what was happening. And he just admitted to it because apparently the New Yorker had found out about it from somebody. And so now it's like in the news that he went through and did all of these things. Is that not the most middle school behavior thing you can imagine? Like,
is it bad that I find that really like epic? Like I think that like okay, he didn't do anything to the bear. The bear was already dead.
right.
Sure, like whatever. Like if he would have killed the bear and like all
Right.
that stuff,
It would have been
but
sad.
because he didn't, he found it,
Mhm.
and then he
According to
wasn't
him, he says that he just
right.
found it. Maybe he killed the bear, but we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if he killed the bear, I'd be like, oh come on, man. Like
Right.
if you're gonna
Don't
kill
kill
a
a baby
bear,
bear.
like eat it. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
right.
Like whatever you're gonna
Don't forget
do,
about it. Yeah.
don't forget about it. But like that kind of stuff is funny to me. Like I like pulled pranks. Like that was like one of the things I used to do all the time. Everybody knew me as like I'm pulling pranks, like putting a fart machine like in the ceiling and like waiting for people to come by and like hitting the button. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of,
At what age though? At what age are we hiding fart machines, Kevin? Is Katie dealing with this now? Are you hiding fart machines in your home with your wife?
at like 31 I was doing it, 32. Like,
You're like, I'm way more mature than I was 3 weeks ago.
I mean like come on now. Come on. Come on.
And it's such an insane story that like I was walking through and he was talking to Rosie O'Donnell about it for some reason. Like she was interviewing him and he was like admitting it to her. And Rosie O'Donnell's hair is blonde. It felt like I fell into like an alternate timeline for a second. And
Yeah.
because we have so many serious things happening in our country and we all care so much about what's happening. And then they're like, hold on though. Let's not talk about any of these other things. This one guy who also wants to be president, he once found a dead bear and then just like kept it in his car for a while and then also set it up like it got hit by a bicycle. And then said he's got a worm in his brain. Like,
Yeah. You know, it makes them more human. I appreciate that because I feel like, senators and all those people are like untouchable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like super out of touch
Yeah.
and like all that. Like they're feels like that, right? But when
Right.
you have somebody like say something goofy, like, yeah, in my youth when I was younger, it's not really like in his youth, but like
Right.
still, like you're like, okay, he's a human
Right.
like me.
He's Kevin, what I'm learning from this is you would absolutely do the same thing as him, put in that same situation.
I wouldn't do it with a carcass. I don't like that to me, but I definitely like I would prank my I like I would this is bad, but I would take an entire teacher prep,
Mhm.
fill up a bunch of balloons, and I filled up my principal's office
Oh,
with
this is
balloons.
something
Like
you actively did. This is not a
there's like something
hypothetical.
no, 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 no. And I like hid in it. I hid in it until like the end of my prep. And she comes in and I like jump out of this like balloon, like this like pile of balloons. And I mean, like when I filled it up, it was up. Like I could stand in the balloons. It took me so long.
Why? Was it her birthday?
No,
You
because it
just
was fun.
So wait. So just a random day, you were like, "You know what I'm gonna do with my prep? I'm gonna fill all of" Did you fill all the balloons in one prep? That's a lot of balloons.
Yeah, so I like recruited some of the office staff, some of the ladies that were in the office. Like they all knew me though. Like they're like, all right, it's fun.
Mhm.
And my principal, I love her. She's like a mom to me, and she loves pranks. So yeah, like I had the best working environment ever. It was like incredible. But
Yeah.
I would just do stuff like that all the time. I just it was a way to like liven things up,
Mm.
and to make it feel a little more fun around the school, you
Do you
know?
do you think now that you're not working there anymore, you could get away with playing pranks on some of the teachers? Like, call the principal and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna
100%.
go." You totally should. You should be like the Mr.
I'm
Beast
heading to
of
the
your former school. Just, like,
I'm
randomly
like
be like, "All of your supplies, here they are."
I so now that I'm not like, well, I guess I'm subbing there still technically
Okay.
because I was supposed to be moving, but our move, like our housing fell through, so we're going to be in San Diego for a while, and I only live a couple miles from the school, so
Nice.
I like pass it going home, and I'm like. I'm like, oh, that used to be my classroom and stuff. But like, I'll be around. They've got me speaking at camps and
Oh,
stuff. So like,
good.
I will be actively involved. I'm actually going to ask my principal today if I can help with surf club, if I can be a
Oh,
surf club
cool.
coach again. So I'll
That's
be around like
awesome.
once a week. So I'll still very much be present in my
Okay,
kids'
good.
lives. But
So you still have the chance to fill the principal's office with
oh,
balloons and
100%.
excellent.
100%. Like, I'm
Excellent.
for sure going to do that. I'm going to recruit people. Like, come on.
Is that the craziest prank that you've pulled on someone, or do you have something that's, like, a level up from that?
Like, when are we talking? Like in college days? Or are we talking like
I didn't know
as
we
a
needed to further define it, but, I mean, if you wanna share in your whole life, what's the craziest one?
So I was like the president of a Christian fraternity
Mhm.
in
This
college.
tracks, yes. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, I know. A lot of people like look at and they're like, "Oh yeah,
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 of
yeah,
course you are, yeah.
totally." Um, and so like by when I say Christian, it sounds like an oxymoron, but it really was. It was really cool. We were still stupid boys, like boys being boys, putting holes in walls, trying to like take a computer chair down like 3 flights of stairs.
Right.
Stupid, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, But we had a sister sorority that was a Christian sorority down the street because I went to San Diego State, and they were like half a block from us. We could just walk down our back alley and get there. And we used to do like pranks with like amongst the houses and stuff. And one of the pranks we did was we went on Craigslist and we got a bunch of like cinder blocks for free. And then we went down, we all pitched in and got like quick drying cement at Home Depot, and we drove over. It was like maybe 2 a.m. or something, and all of us just like started building this like brick wall in front of their door. It was like the best thing. Like they woke up in the morning. I get a text from the president, the sorority president, and she's like, "Kevin, what did you guys do?" And I was like,
What do you mean? I didn't do anything.
"What are you talking about? I was working.
Right.
I was sleeping. What do
Oh
Um,
my
but
gosh.
like, yeah, so I've always loved that stuff as long as it was like didn't destroy property. I've always liked really fun things. Like I never egged when I was a kid. Like I never egged cars or anything like that because I always thought like I don't want to damage anybody's car, but like I'll TP your house. Like that's funny. Like people, we would have like TP wars. Like when we were, when I was like 17,
Yeah.
like I would TP my best friend's house or the girl that I liked at the time or the girl I was dating. And then she would do the same thing,
Yeah.
like to
Do
me,
kids
like as,
do kids still do that?
oh yeah. And I tell
Really?
them to do
Okay.
it. So like there's like some kids, I'm like, dude, I my school, as you know, was a private Christian school, and like the culture that comes with that
Mhm.
is a little different than a public school, and so like the parents and stuff, there were a lot of parents that lived like pretty close by to the school, and um, they were really cool, like really cool people. They actually um, this like maybe a month ago, we got invited over to dinner, and they like hosted us, and just they wanted to like pour into us before we thought we were going to leave, and
Yeah.
so like things like that are really cool. But I was like, now that I know where you guys live, you guys better watch out. I'm TPing your house.
Right, it's happening. This was a mistake.
I was like, you guys, man, you messed up. We love you, but
Right, was this a parent from the school that
I was a
hosted?
parent
Okay.
and I taught like all three of their kids.
Oh,
So
that's
like,
awesome.
yeah, I mean, at that school, I taught almost every subject, and almost every grade, like I've taught 7 through 11
Okay.
in my time there. So
Jeez.
some of those kids I legitimately watched like grow up
Aw, you were
and
their
like
Mr.
taught them.
Feeney.
I was.
That's awesome.
It was really yeah, like bittersweet to see them go and to also see like also go myself. But
Yeah, I bet. So one of the things that we do on the podcast is I get questions from my listeners, and then we can try and take a stab at answering with a little bit of advice. And I chose this one for today because you are in the midst of changing from being, a classroom teacher to being full-time content creator and all of that. And the person who's asking the question is also in the midst of a change. They said, I'm changing grade levels and I feel completely overwhelmed with the volume of the material. What is your advice of how to prepare for the new curriculum without spending my entire summer working?
oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's tough because like that happened to me like every summer.
Hmm.
So like I never taught like the same thing. The only thing that I taught like back to back for 3 years was AP US history. They were like, you need to stay here.
Yeah.
But I had taught like 1 year I was teaching seventh grade, world history. And then the next year I was teaching uh like seventh grade English and so like it was every summer felt like I was a new teacher
Yeah.
all over again. So I know that feeling. My advice would just be focus on like what you're good at and the curriculum comes.
Yeah.
Like let's just be honest. The kids don't remember much from curriculum. Right. Like,
Yeah.
and that's my whole thing is like, I'll never say that I'm the greatest teacher ever. Like like administrative stuff, like I'm terrible at like grading. I hate grading, but I do it. I do it because it's
Right.
necessary and it's good feedback. Like kids need to have feedback, but
Yeah.
I was all about making sure my students like knew that they were loved.
Hmm.
And like that to me is like so important because then they'll learn.
Yeah.
Like I had kids that hated history, but they loved my class.
Yeah.
And that's my degree, was history. And so like that to me is like, yeah, they'll never care about like what I taught them. They'll remember some of the things that like I taught them. I had a kid email me this past year. She Navy kid, and parents moved to Virginia, and so she was like emailing me back on my school email and saying like, I miss you so much, like
Aw.
I love my history teacher now, but they're not you, and then saying like, do you remember when you taught us about this? And I was like, wow, that's so random. But yeah, I do remember. Like, you know what I mean? But like things like that. But it's just, I think like, yeah, you do have to do a little bit extra like footwork with the
Hmm.
curriculum. And it is hard. But I think like focus on just building relationships.
Yeah.
That's going to matter more in the end anyway.
I agree. And I think that it also is encouraging because that is a little bit more in your control than the curriculum is. Because especially when like you said that you taught APUSH for a long time, the volume of the AP history exams is insurmountable. Like there's no way like AP World and AP US history, there's so much they put in the curriculum for that that like you're right, focusing on trying to memorize all of it before you start the school year and get everything kind of lined up before the school year even starts. Like even if you did, there's no way that you can anticipate what the needs of the kids are going to be in your class. And so you might be good for the first week, but then after that you're going to have to change everything because oh, this kid actually needs remediation and can't write a
100%.
DBQ or whatever it
Yeah.
is. Like, yeah.
100%. You always go in with like a plan, but
Mhm.
then that plan like 99% of the time changes.
Yeah.
You know
Totally
what I
agree.
mean? You're just like you have to have a plan. You can't just like wing it.
Yeah.
There are times teachers do that. I've done it. You wing it. But
Every teacher has to at some
every teacher
point. Yeah.
has, right? There's like weeks that you're like a couple days ahead of them. You know
Right.
what I mean? And that's like it's true. Or
Yeah.
like the morning of, you're like cramming and it is like it's life. It's what happens. But a lot of the times, and as you know, like things just get derailed.
Mhm.
And you're just like,
Yeah.
okay, how do we pivot? What do we
Right.
do? This
Yeah.
didn't work. This lesson is not working with them. So what's my backup?
Right. Right. And I would also say that when you're looking at a brand new curriculum, rather than looking at like all of the specific content you have to cover, I would say if you create certain teaching strategies or certain so I've been doing like a bunch of professional development on edu protocols, which is basically different ways that you are going to teach things. Like each, it's so hard to explain. This is the hardest thing for me to explain for some reason. But essentially, there's certain steps that a teacher is taking when they are breaking down, let's say, an article, and they're going to take steps 1 through 3, regardless of what the article is. Like the article is going to get switched in and out, but you're learning a strategy on how to analyze, and that's the kind of thing that if you're starting a new whole thing, you only need to be a week ahead of the kids because you're going to be doing the same 3 or 4 activities with whatever it is, and you can switch out what the content is. So that way they're learning kind of the steps they need to take, which is also powerful when you're doing an AP test because you're going to have something brand new. The kids won't, have necessarily read that specific letter from that founding father. So you have to teach
Yeah.
them like how to analyze and how to do that. So I'd
Yeah.
like focus more on the skills you're teaching as opposed to like the specific content is what I always found to kind of
100%.
be most helpful.
And I'm like a huge proponent of using like AI to supplement yourself. Like if there's so many ways to like get curriculum using AI. Like it'll like even if you're teaching English, it'll like change a lexicon,
Mhm.
or the lexile level
Yeah.
of whatever the kids are reading. And it's like that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to like do that extra like how teachers used to just have to spend hours and hours doing it.
Yeah.
So I think like using the modern tools to do that is super crucial.
Yeah.
Like especially so you don't feel like you're drowning. Like I'm sorry, but like teachers are overworked. It's just the system. It's not
Yeah.
what people want, but it is the system.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that like the less you have to do as a teacher and the more you can like dial in and focus like on what matters, you'll just be a better teacher.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I feel like sometimes we also hold ourselves to just certain things that we're the only one expecting it that of us. So for example, I would have students who would come in like 3 weeks into a unit and English is not their first language. And they're plopped in my class, and we are halfway through reading this text that my kids who in that class are native English speakers are struggling with. And so I would use AI to say, summarize chapters 1 through 5 of Mice and Men. And it would summarize it for me. And then I would say, translate to Spanish. And I translate it. I'd hand that to the kid. That way I can give them kind of something to start with and not say, okay, you better go home and read these 5 chapters and also translate them from a language that you're not familiar with yet. Like that's an insane thing to expect of these kids. And so using AI, using all the different tools like that, I 100% second that because it has already saved me so much time working with it with like college curriculum building and all of that kind of stuff. So,
100%.
yeah. Um and it is still, as we're recording this, it is still technically summer. So I have not started back my "What are your students doing?" question that I do on Fridays, where people talk about like some of the chaotic things that their students do. So I wanted to see if you have a memory of maybe one of the craziest things you had a student do in your classroom.
So one year, and I actually just posted about this because I was asking my student like, what are some things that you remember, and he was like, dude, that the water bottle incident is what he said. And it was actually like my first year of teaching, I like turned to my back and I was like writing on the board. And one of like when we say like one of our like best students, they're not better than anybody else, but like really well disciplined, self motivated, outgoing, runs for ASB, like, like the traditional, boxes or whatever. Well, she ended up hitting me with like a full water bottle, like just nailed me in the back. But it like she didn't mean to do it. She was trying to hit the guy like in front, like that was in the front of the class. But he ducked and
Oh,
it drilled me. And I remember like turning around and I just like, I must have had like a look on my face that like every kid in that room just like had like whiplash. They were like, whoosh, and they were like, and I just remember her like sinking down, like in her seat. And she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I was
oh
like,
my
I mean,
gosh.
like I knew they were just like, it was like whatever. But I
Yeah.
definitely put on a front for like a while. I was like, I can't believe you did that.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe you did that. And she was like, I'm sorry. But it
Oh
was
my
really the boy. It
gosh.
was like the boy. I mean, it was both of their faults, but it was definitely like I guess he threw the water bottle first. Like it happened, and you know how stuff happens. Like literally 10 seconds.
Yeah, you probably turned
And it
around
just
to write one single word on the board, and then you got drilled in your
yeah.
back.
That's why I was like so surprised. I was like, what just happened? I was like
Oh, that poor girl. I could just imagine the horror of that. Like, she's trying to get back at this guy and then accidentally hits the teacher. That is brutal.
I know.
That is so
Oh
bad.
man. I mean, like kids have pulled pranks, things like that, but it's like nothing that I wouldn't have done.
I was so any pranks that impressed you that a kid did in your class?
So every year, like on my birthday, they would prank me. One of my favorites actually, like I remember, actually this was just for Christmas time. They wrapped my entire classroom with gift wrap.
That's so nice.
The entire thing. I was like, man, if you would have put the same effort into like your homework, I would like but it's like I get it. It's not as fun. Like I'm the same way. Like
Oh
no, but
my
it
gosh.
was really sweet. They like put a tree in the middle of my room and so I like kept it for a
That's
while
awesome.
till it
Yeah.
started to fall off and look janky. And so I was like, all right, we'll take it down. But
Yeah.
that was one that impressed me. I liked that one. That was
That's so
cool.
great. Okay, so before I let you go, can you share about any upcoming projects or where people can find you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a former teacher. I'm no longer teaching. And I've decided to step away from the profession. Um, for now, I don't know what the future is going to hold for me. I don't necessarily miss teaching in the way that some others might. I miss mentoring. Like that was like my biggest thing was mentoring kids, and always having my room full at lunchtime, just talking to kids and whatever. But I think right now what I'm doing is I've launched a new YouTube channel that's just me, Kevin McClintock, and it's kind of like peeling back the layers behind like this persona of Mr. McTikTok. And I'll say that Mr. McTikTok is more of just like it's me through like a teacher lens because it's like, I mean, I have like old videos of me in the classroom like dancing and jumping up on tables and like being Mr. McTikTok before that was a thing. But I want it to be like more real and or feel more real at least, and not like a 30-second clip of me doing something ridiculous or saying like Skibbity Ohio toilet, whatever, like, what, like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm launching that new channel. I'm probably going to launch a Discord and try to build like a community going forward. And I'd like to pursue this. And whether I fail at being a social media influencer, like, is trivial to me. I think for me, it's something that I'd like to try and do. And I hope that it inspires other people to like jump into something new. Like I always felt trapped sometimes, like as a teacher, I was like, I've got nothing else because this is my degree. Like this is all I can do.
Hmm.
But like it's one of the things that I did. I was a
Yeah.
mentor. I was a surf coach. I taught so many. I taught English, history, uh, life science, AP US history, health, speech. Like the curriculum to me it's like inconsequential,
Yeah.
And so for me, as long as I'm pouring into people and if I can use social media to do that. Now I don't know if I'm going to teach online. Maybe that is something that I might do, but even at the very least, if I can just make somebody feel seen, through like a screen because we all want to be connected, that's enough.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
yeah. So, my new channel is just Kevin McClintock. It's not Mr. McTikTok vibes. I mean, it is because it's me, but it
Right.
has nothing to do with teaching.
Gotcha.
So
And so these are YouTube videos. Do you also have a separate platform you're creating on TikTok and Instagram, or are you just transitioning your Mr. McTikTok ones over to kind of this new time for you?
that new channel, the YouTube channel, is like kind of its own thing. I'm still keeping Mr. McTikTok, alive. But yeah, the content's changing. I'm not like in a classroom. That's not my backdrop. Mr. McTikTok might be like a dad. You know what I mean? Eventually, like,
Yeah.
and my content has changed so many times. Like I used to be known as the dance, like I danced. It's like my original TikTok dances. And then I did uh stories where I like would run through the school hallways and like do ridiculous like stories of like a monster chasing me or whatever. Like just ridiculous things. And then it went to roast battles, and then it went to, pranks, and then it went to the marriage content, and all that. And so like I'm just going to create stuff that I hope resonates with people,
Yeah.
and makes people laugh while making fun of myself. Like I think that's like the joy of it, that I get to do that kind of stuff and make people feel better.
That's awesome. Do you want to shout out your wife's YouTube channel as well? Because I know she's working on that.
Oh yeah. Her Saturday Chronicles. So it's Katie McClintock, just Katie and then McClintock, McClintock. So yeah, and she's loving that.
Yay. Good. I'm so excited. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Andrea.
Yeah. All right, guys. We will be right back. Welcome back to Those Who Can't Do. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Kevin. It was really fun catching up with him and hearing about all of the new projects he has going. So please do go check out everything he has on his YouTube for Kevin McClintock. And he's still on Instagram and TikTok as Mr. McTiktok. If you haven't seen his stuff before, he's usually got like a jersey on and he's talking like a middle school boy, which kind of fits now that we've hung out with him a little bit and learned that if RFK and Kevin were on the same journey together, they might come up with some of the same ideas, which was an absolute treat to hear about. If you have any comments or suggestions on who should come on the podcast, you can contact me on Instagram or TikTok at Educator Andrea, or you can email us, andrea@human-content.com, or you can reach my Human Content Podcast family at Human Content Pods. And thank you to all the amazing listeners who have left feedback and reviews. I appreciate it so much. It warms my heart every single time I read one. So thank you in particular to Zaya_K on Apple Podcast, who said, informative and fun. I'm a student and listening to this podcast is very entertaining, but also provides a lot of perspective that I find very valuable and interesting. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you would like to see the full video episodes up every week, they are on YouTube at Educator Andrea. And I am your host, Andrea Forkham. A very special thank you to our guest co-host today, Kevin McClintock. Our executive producers are Andrea Forkham, Aaron Corney, Rob Goldman, and Shanti Brooke. Our editor is Andrew Sims. Our engineer is Jason Portizo. Our music is by Omer Benzvi. Our recording location is the Indiana State by College of Education. To learn more about our Those Who Can't Do's program disclaimer and ethics policy and submission, verification, and licensing terms, you can go to podcasterandrea.com. Those Who Can't Do is a human content production. Thank you so much for watching. If you're like me and you're thinking, gosh, I really need more Those Who Can't Do in my life, you can start your binging right now by clicking on that playlist button right over there. New episodes are out every Thursday, so please subscribe and join us each week on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.